Okay, guys, so the school year is starting 2025, 2026. Let's say you're high school, you're looking for a show and tell project. You find my slides. You want to give this talk. Be my guest. I'm just going to go through them real quick, give you some pointers on how to do it. First of all, you have to have found this link. You put it in share mode as follows so that, let me just show you that. I think when you follow the link, it'll come in more like this, showing all the slides off to the left. I'm going to try to get through all this in under 5 minutes. So let's get started. So you hit slideshow and that puts it in full screen mode. And these are little basket modules. You define a module as just a small tetrahedral wedge shape, just a container. It's for doing little geometric assemblies or just volume calculations, even if there's no assembly involved, like when you pour water between measuring cups in a kitchen setting and you're cooking. These are like little measuring cups in a world of polyhedra defined in these books, Synergetics and Synergetics 2 by Buckminster Fuller, who I introduced briefly, kind of tying him into what we might call the deep state today, just because of his connections in the Pentagon were pretty deep, and with his friend Applewhite, and because he was a Cold Warrior in a positive sense. Keep war cold, keep civilization on track, kind of competing with itself, which is what his synergetics does. It kind of brings into question some of our math by showing another math. It's like put something side by side with something, and you've already got a dialectic, as they say. So we're talking about ABTES, which spells beast, and then we have an optional K module to make it basket if you want to bring in the K module. In the very bottom center, that little Greek letter phi, some people say phi, I say phi, square root of 5 plus 1 all over 2. That's used in the lines below to give you the volumes of these shapes. So like second root of 2 over 8, phi to the third. And instead of saying phi to the third, we just put the phi side by side, meaning multiply them. So it's the same as saying phi to the third or phi to the fifth, whatever. It's just an aesthetic choice here to do it this way, not bring little subscripts into it. Who needs exponents at this point? But at the upper right here on this determinant, that little 1/2 in the far upper right, that is a way of saying square root or second root. We don't want to use a giant surd over this whole determinant. But what we're showing are some old volume formulas from, well, actually the one on the top is not old at all. That one is using as input what we call quadre coordinates for any point in space, like XYZ space, but with 4 reference rays. And, you're going to have some background reading to do if you want to present this, but it's worth it because you're going to get into this whole number volume stuff. You're going to get to talk about a famous futurist with Cold Warrior connotations. It's kind of relevant. There's great graphics, and you're going to have a lot of Python. Just remember BEAST. Here's the A and the B already, and those are just each the same volume, 1/124th. They're each 1/24th of our reference unit volume, which is the unit edge 1 diameter tetrahedron, or 2 radii. And here we have 2 A modules and 1 B module assembling what's called a mite, which is a space-filling tetrahedron without chirality, without handedness. From mites, you can make the coupler, again, unit volume. From mites, you can make a cube of volume 3. Relative to our tetrahedron, you get into the whole area of space-filling tetrahedra, which is not exclusively a focus of synergetics. In fact, all of this stuff heavily overlaps all the high school math you're likely to encounter when it comes to computational geometry and then some. So I would present this either in a math class or a literature class or an art class, the kind of art class where you're doing computer graphics, because there's a lot of computer graphics at your fingertips once you master what's called the nested hierarchy, concentric polyhedra woven together, and all of their volumes set side by side. Great art being done already by other teachers in this area. You and your friends could become masters of this material, and because there's so much room at the top, you could say the distance between the ground floor and the top is not very far. Like you won't have much competition, and you'll learn some Python. So there's a lot I'm kind of going over quickly. How we can scale, say, the S module and the E module to different levels, different sizes, using the number phi, the Greek ratio there. That shows two S modules side by side. One's phi up from the other. In other words, all of its edges are phi longer, which is about 1.618, and that ends up making the volume of phi to the third power bigger. You scale up by a third power of whatever the linear factor was by which you scaled up the edges. So we get all these interesting identities in terms of the S module and the E module. Again, we can use algebraic numbers and then just spit out the decimal renderings to whatever degree we want. And there's this kind of subway map of how these can sort of turn into each other, what the transformations are. And that gets us into kind of this sort of morph map, starting to feel like category theory. You want to overlap with that. Spelling out beast on this slide once again, what the volumes are. Notice it looks like I'm giving two different volumes for the same modules left and right. Well, that's because we're talking about XYZ volume versus IVM volume, because once again, in our world, in our namespace, it's the unit volume, unit edge tetrahedron, not the unit edge cube that governs in terms of when we talk about volume. And going back and forth is just a simple constant, like converting American dollars to Canadian dollars. It'll seem like this is rambling. Of course, it seems that way because there's a lot here you don't know. So it's going by really fast and you're like, oh, I'll never learn all this. I'm saying it's not that hard. And when you present show and tell, if they're not your slides and it's clear they're not your slides, you can treat it as a found object. It's like, oh, look what I found out there on the internet. This crazy slideshow by this guy named Kirby. And it's all about this weird, arcane, esoteric math by some futurist that we've never heard of. Isn't this cool, right? So there's a lot of ways you could dive into this without becoming a complete, authority on absolutely every slide, right? You don't have to wait for that before you do your first presentation of the slides, because they are cool, right? They're catchy, they're eye-catchy. And the idea is we're unifying, we're building a bridge between what used to be called the CP Snow chasm. It's a metaphysical chasm between the humanities and the mathematical STEM science kind of stuff. Path, philosophy, anthropology, theater, history, intersecting with science, technology, engineering, and mathematics on the A. They say STEM plus A equals STEAM, and they say A equals art. But I say A equals anthropology. And you'll find art in that, inside of anthropology. So same thing, STEAM, STEM, crisscross. Thank you to friends and collaborators. So have a good time. Enjoy sharing this in your classroom. Let me know if you have some interesting feedback or questions. Talk to you later.